Hey,
We need to talk.
about alcohol.
I'm Paige Raymond, I'm 17 and I'm from Dover, New Hampshire. When I was 15, I started drinking very heavily. It had a lot to do with where I was in my mental health and a lot with my parents separating in their divorce, and I was looking for a coping mechanism. At first it started out as something fun that I was doing, and then it turned into a way for me to deal with things that I was going through in my life. That progressed into drinking every night, and eventually I ended up in a drunk driving car accident. I was living with my dad in Wells, Maine, and I completely totaled my car. It was around 2:30 a.m., so I got into some pretty deep legal trouble, and luckily it ended pretty well for me. But once I moved to Dover, I met Bob Fagan of Live Free Recovery. He was a counselor there, so my guidance counselor set me up with him, and I was meeting with him a couple times a week. And then in about February, my accident happened in October. In about February, he asked me, this was of 2016, he asked me if I would be a peer leader at his company that he was starting for an IOP. And I was so excited. I was like, absolutely. I've seen a lot of people and friends go down the same path that I went down, and they were not as lucky. So it became something that I was very passionate about. And the more people I met, the more connections I made, I realized how big of an issue this was, and then it's not just teenagers having fun. It becomes more than that. Have the conversation with your child. Don't keep them away from it. My mom was always very protective of me, and she half the time wouldn't even let me watch the news, just because it's pretty miserable most of the time. But don't shelter your children from it, because it is a very real issue that's going on in New Hampshire right now. And have that talk with your children, no matter what age they are. If they can understand what you're saying, then have the talk with them, because it's something important that we need to raise more awareness about. And ask them if they've talked about it in school and what they've learned, and definitely become more as educated as you can. When I first started at the IOP, I didn't really have very many goals. I didn't know what I wanted to do, and even as a peer leader when I started, I learned how to set goals from others. And now my biggest goal is getting into college. So that's working out pretty well for me, and I think that the idea of having a goal-based group is so important, because yes, recovery is a huge, huge goal and very, very important. But I think that setting other goals outside of that is also just as important.